It's springtime, and the kids are excited for spring training. They've got new gloves and bats for Christmas, and they're so excited about breaking them in. You've promised to take them to the park to practice hitting, pitching, catching, and running. The weekend is here, and your kids have called their cousins to get a little group together to play. The chattering of happy children fill the air as you wrangle them and walk to the local park, which has a baseball diamond and nice shade for this unusually warm day. You arrive, and the group splits up into pairs. Soon, the rhythmic sound of playing fills the air. It's only broken up by laughter. But then, you hear something else. It's like someone is digging. You stop to look around, but nothing catches your eye. Then, the sound of the digging gets louder and louder. You leave the kids and walk away looking for whoever is making the noise. Suddenly, the air gets cold, and a chill runs down your spine when you spot a decrepit headstone near the park's baseball diamond. It's the gravestone of Mary McLeod, a 27-year-old Kingston resident who died in 1834. Sadness washes over you, and you're about to head back to the kids when out of the corner of your eye you spot a man digging, shoveling dark soil and tossing it to one side onto a pile. The man looks odd and out of place. You're about to ask him for help with the headstone, but as soon as you get closer, you briefly trip. When you look back up, the man has vanished. I'm Nadine Bailey, and this is Haunted Canada. Join me as I share the story of McBurney Park, better known as Skeleton Park. Located between Baklava, Alma, and Ordnance Street, just a few blocks northeast of downtown Kingston, you'll find a local park with such an intriguing history it could be used in a Hollywood horror film. It is 4 acres of lush green grass, trees, and shrubs, with a children's playground, picnic tables, a basketball court, and a baseball field. The park is dissected by 6 cement walkways, which converge in the middle, where a plaque is surrounded by plants from the Kingston Historical Society. This small monument tells the story of the land and the reason we're here. The 4-acre plot of land was once a burial ground for mostly Scottish and Irish immigrants. But there is evidence of Indigenous people living in this land since as far back as the Archaic period. The Huron-Wendat and Haudenosaunee occupied the eastern edge of the Great Lakes before the Haudenosaunee took control of the region in the mid-1600s. While European diseases affected all Indigenous peoples, the Huron-Wendat were particularly affected by smallpox epidemics between 1634 and 1640. By 1649, the area was largely controlled by the Haudenosaunee. Some Huron-Wendat went west, while others became part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Meanwhile, European exploration of the region can be traced back to Samuel de Champlain in 1615. Louis Dubois, Comte de Frontenac, established a fortified settlement in 1673, followed by Rena Robert Cavalier LaSalle. Fort Frontenac served as a base for explorations west along the Great Lakes and south of the Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana. In 1758, the British captured the fort, and in 1763, the region was ceded to them by the Treaty of Paris. Then, in 1783, following the American Revolution, the War of Independence, the Crown began to settle loyalists or refugees from the former American colonies, and the area was named Kingstown in honor of King George III. It became the administrative center and soon Kingston became a major port. A 4-acre plot of land located between Baklava, Alma, and Ordnance Streets, just a few blocks northeast of downtown Kingston, was originally established in 1809 as a final resting place for soldiers who died during the War of 1812. The conflict was fought between the United States and Great Britain from 1812 to 1815, at first over British violations of U.S. maritime rights. As a colony of Great Britain, Canada was caught up in the war and was invaded several times by the Americans. Upper Canada, Lower Canada, the Great Lakes, and the Atlantic became battlegrounds fought over fiercely. After the Peace Treaty of Ghent in 1814 was signed, life largely returned to normal. However, the war contributed to a growing sense of national identity, including the idea that civilian soldiers were largely responsible for repelling the American invaders. In contrast, First Nations allied to British and Canadian causes suffered by not only losing warriors, but also lost against American expansion in the West. 10 years later, in 1819, the land in Kingston became known as the Upper Burial Ground and was used as a final resting place for Anglicans and Catholics. By 1825, the cemetery expanded to include burial space for Presbyterians. In 1826, a 24-foot monument was erected amongst the headstones near Baklava Street to honor Reverend John Barclay, the first minister of St. Andrew's Church. John Barclay had been born in Scotland in 1795, where he grew up and trained for the ministry. He arrived in Kingston, Upper Canada, in 1821 and quickly became embroiled in an ongoing conflict with the Church of England. He fought them on various issues to advance the rights of the Scottish Church and Scottish nationalism. This issue continued long after his early death in 1826, when the monument was erected. Artisans meticulously fitted each piece of sturdy gray stone together to form an elegant obelisk which tapers to a point, adorned with a decorative finial at the top. Today, the stones are weathered and cracked. Regardless, vibrant floral arrangements are neatly arranged in planters around the base. His is one of the oldest monuments in Kingston and still stands proudly in the park. Among the many buried below the park, there are as many as 10,000 people, although estimates say the true number is likely higher. That's because of the many epidemics and outbreaks that struck the area. From 1827 to 1832, there was a malaria outbreak which killed a large number of laborers working on the Rideau Canal. Then, from 1832 to 1834, there was a cholera outbreak that killed an estimated 10% of Kingston's population. And then there was a significant outbreak of typhus, also known as ship's fever, in the 1840s. In 1847, an estimated 50,000 Irish immigrants arrived in Kingston. Many survived the perilous journey across the Atlantic Ocean in overcrowded barges. They were fleeing the Great Famine and were hoping to find better luck in the colonies, only to contract typhus at sea. They saw thousands of their fellow travelers, family, and friends die. Upon their arrival in Kingston, those sick were housed in makeshift fever sheds along the waterfront, where they succumbed to the disease. Typhus is not directly transmitted from person to person like a cold or flu. It spreads by a bite or exposure to feces of infected lice, fleas, or chiggers, all of which spread quickly in crowded ships. Soon, people were experiencing fever, chills, headaches, rashes, muscle pain, nausea, and vomiting. Residents at first were unprepared for the deadly disease, and they opened their homes to take care of the sick and dying. An estimated 300 Kingston residents contracted typhoid and died in 1847. Many of them found their final resting place in the 4 acres of land on Baklava, Alma, and Ordnance streets. The cemetery quickly filled up. Corpses were buried quickly, sometimes just 1 or 2 feet below the surface, not the customary 6 feet. Many of these hasty burials fell victim to grave robbers who called themselves resurrections. The criminal gang would enter the graveyard under the cover of darkness to dig up bodies. They'd take any valuables for themselves, and then they would sell the cadavers to medical students at Queen's University. The empty coffins were then filled with rocks to prevent the soil from sagging and give away any evidence of their crimes. By the 1850s, the cemetery had reached capacity, and in 1864, the common, or upper burial grounds, officially closed. Locals then began burying their dead in Cadarathri, a non-denominational cemetery, and St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery outside the city limits at the time. Common, or upper burial grounds, became neglected, and the cemetery fell into disrepair. Livestock grazed on the grounds, and criminals vandalized gravestones. The indignities continued until 1893, when the public disgrace became too much, and the community pressured the city of Kingston to convert the cemetery into a park. They asked relatives of the deceased to pay for the disinterment and reburial, and only around 100 bodies were ever moved. Catholics, Presbyterians, and Anglicans could be reinterred at St. Mary's and non-denominational reinterred at Cadarathri, but only upon the family's request. When the American consul heard that the victims of typhoid were being dug up, he threatened to close the port because he was afraid of a new outbreak. Despite this setback, the city of Kingston went through with their plans. In my research, I found a grainy black and white photo taken in 1891 as some of the bodies were being exhumed. You can see many 2-story wooden homes and dozens of white headstones, many of which seem to be placed one on top of another in the overcrowded cemetery. Some are standing, while others have been toppled and broken into several pieces. Only one monument, the obelisk, remains standing today. Researchers estimate that of the 10,000 bodies in the common or upper burial grounds, 4,000 are Catholic, 4,000 Anglican, and 2,000 Presbyterian, while the gravediggers took less than 1,000 bodies. The grim task of removing bodies from the cemetery fell on the hands of Mr. Adfit, a gravedigger and his workmen who had been hired to remove 540 bodies, plus an additional 167 boxes of remains. It was a grotesque process, as many of the bodies hadn't fully decomposed. That's because Kingston has shallow soil with a layer of bedrock beneath it, causing bodies to be buried closer to the surface. Bodies buried 1 or 2 feet below the ground surface means higher levels of water retention, which prevents bodies from decaying properly. Some of the graves, when opened, were empty, which made police aware of the grave robbers' crimes, while other graves contained 7 to 11 bodies to accommodate crowding. On June 15, 1893, authorities halted the removal of bodies upon discovering that many had not fully decomposed. I unearthed a photo of the moment 9 workmen are holding shovels standing atop mounds of dirt surrounded by over 40 open graves. On the left side of the photo, several wooden coffins lie on top of the gravel that have been dug up, and on the right side you can see a coffin, and next to it there are 3 little girls that are around age 10. 2 girls have dark hair and white dresses, while the third girl is wearing a black dress and smiling as she sits on top of a coffin. During this time, the cemetery was surrounded by homes, and tenants complained that they could smell the rotting corpses being dug up by the city. Something had to be done. So the city council came up with a quick solution. They plowed over the cemetery, headstones and all, and then added a layer of dirt and grass over it. The cemetery was now a 4-acre community park. On February 6, 1894, it was officially named Frontenac Park, and that is what it was known as for over 70 years until February 26, 1965. That's when the park was renamed McBurney Park in honor of Jim McBurney, a principal for 25 years of the nearby Central Public School. On Thursday, February 28, 2002, a 7-foot-high granite Celtic cross monument was erected. Carved into the base is a plaque stating, quote, "In the memory of the best 10,000 mainly Irish and Scottish immigrants buried here in Kingston Upper Cemetery, 1813 to 1865. May they rest in peace." End quote. While the vast majority of those buried in the parks were from Ireland and Scotland, the park is also dedicated to the memory of all those buried in the grounds. Today, the park is at the center of a growing Inner Harbor community. While it is a place for families to stroll and children to play, it is also an integral part of bringing neighbors together. If you're wondering how it became known as Skeleton Park, well, in the 1950s, kids in the neighborhood who were playing in the park began to find skulls that had made their way to the surface. The skulls would only take the kids a few minutes to dig up. They would then mount the skulls to the front of their bikes and ride around to the shock of neighbors. Other times, kids playing baseball in the park would find headstones protruding from the grass and use them as bases. When the city installed playground equipment and a wading pool, the construction crew accidentally dug up more human remains, leading to decades of ghost stories. In a 2011 interview in the Queen's Journal, Alec Ross, a local resident, spoke about finding a decrepit headstone near the park's baseball diamond. He was playing catch with his son when he spotted the gravestone of Mary McLeod, a 27-year-old Kingston resident who died in 1834. Alex said, quote, "Seeing the stone revealed just kind of made history very real. I've seen other stones in the park, and even some bones during construction years ago." End quote. In the interview, he also stated that 2 unreadable gravestones will often emerge on the west side of the park during spring thaw. Today, the park is a popular tourist attraction for ghost seekers and those hoping to have paranormal encounters. In the book Ghosts of Kingston by Gene Shackleton, there is the story of 2 students renting an apartment on Ordnance Street just across from the park. They saw something unusual going on in the park, especially after one young woman had a vision of a fire one evening. Then strange things began to happen in their apartment. The women often felt a cold chill whenever they were alone. At other times, they felt like they were trapped. On one occasion, they heard a man and a woman whispering to each other, almost as if standing right next to them. The women described the presence as dark and sinister. Other residents nearby have often seen a group of men, women, and children standing in the distance dressed in early 1800s clothing. Many others have reported feeling like they're being watched or followed, and often feel like someone or something doesn't want them in the park. Disembodied voices, along with screams of men and women, and mysterious crying are heard in the park when it's empty. Many believe that these experiences are record skips. That's when a ghost or spirit continues to do something they did in life and does not see or hear anyone who is not dead. Many of the homes bordering the park have also experienced paranormal activity, including objects moving on their own, lights going on and off, and doors opening and slamming shut. Many have reported seeing apparitions of men, women, and children wandering from the front door, then through the back door. Many believe that if you visit the park late at night, during a full moon, you can see the cemetery as it looked in the mid-1800s, filled with headstones, coffins, and the spirits of those still buried beneath the ground. And as I mentioned, the park does have some negative energy, as visitors and tourists have claimed to have been physically hurt by spirits in the park. Strange and unexplainable things happen there on almost a daily basis, which is why Skeleton Park has been well documented as one of Canada's most haunted locations. For those who live in the area, it's more than just a place to play and stroll. It is the final resting place of over 10,000 men, women, and children. So the next time you're in Kingston's Inner Harbor neighborhood, make sure to stop by to honor those who sometimes rest beneath your feet. Thank you for joining me as we explored Skeleton Park in Kingston, Ontario. The Edmonton Ghost Tours sponsors Haunted Canada. I will link it in the show notes. Haunted Canada is written and produced by me, Nadine Bailey, with senior producer, Dila Velasquez. Production and sound design is by Rob Johnson, with help from Rosin Kufer. If you would like to support this podcast, please follow and share. We also appreciate a like and a 5-star written review. Also, you can follow me on our different social media platforms, or if you have a ghost story, haunting, or true crime that you'd like for us to cover on this podcast, please email me through the website hauntedcanada.com. I have received many emails with suggestions for stories to cover. Thank you to everyone for taking the time to do this. I will be researching all the stories in due course. Thank you from all of us at Haunted Canada and Curious Cast. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.